Hello and welcome to the big picture. As the dust settles down following the surgical strikes undertaken by the Indian Army on the terrorist launch pads across the LOC yesterday, questions are being asked about what next. While the Indian government is involved in assessing the fallout of the strikes and is also preparing for any retaliation, there are also questions about what these strikes means and how it is being viewed in the international community. Would this be seen from the Indian point of view or from the Pakistan point of view? What are the challenges for the Indian diplomacy and also for the Indian security forces? We will discuss all this today with Rajiv Sikri, former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs, Major General retired Ashok Mehta, a security analyst, Rakesh Sood, former ambassador and distinguished fellow at the Observer Research Foundation, Rana Banerjee, former Special Secretary, Cabinet Secretariat, and on the phone line is Pramit Chaudhary, consulting editor, Hindustan Times. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Sikri, now, one thing which continues to be baffle a lot of people is why is it that Pakistan is still in a state of denial, and aren't they taking a huge risk by being in this kind of a state of denial?
No, I think they are being prudent and careful, because if they were to admit that this event happened, then there would be pressure on them to react, and that would set them up the
But at
escalation.
some point of time, if evidence has come out and it is proved that this has happened, what will be the state of the Pakistan government? How will they face their own domestic audience? Forget that.
No, but that is precisely why they are playing it down and saying it was a regular cross-border violation rather than a surgical strike. I think that we would be wise to not to press this point too much. We have made our point, our people know about it. But if we do not want escalation, and I think that our interest is also not in escalating matters. The message has gone home, so let's leave it at that. So I don't think that it's in anyone's interest to escalate matters further. The message has gone that please don't do it. If you do it again, we will strike again maybe. So I think it's all right that there is a very sober, relatively sober reaction from Pakistan. We shouldn't be worried about the denial. I think it's actually a good portent if we do not
as far
want
as we are concerned.
No, overall situation, if we do not want to go up the escalation ladder, then it is better.
General Mehta, one of the other things is being said is that the reason why they are not escalating, they're not talking about it or they're underplaying the whole thing, is that one, they don't want to escalate it and we also don't want it to be escalated. But can we say that they have learned the lesson?
No, I think this is a very tricky situation for Pakistan. In my judgment, they have made an initial error of not acknowledging this strike. And why they do not acknowledge this strike is that it shows their high alert in which they were during the period soon after Uri happened. That the fact that the Indian commandos were able to get across the line of control and do what they had to do and come back doesn't show the Pakistan army in good. Now, they have put themselves in a bind by saying that they have not crossed the line of actual control. So, are the Indians so stupid that they would claim this, whereas for years the government of India has stuck to the fact that the LOC is so sacrosanct. We did not cross it in 2001. We didn't. Even after
or at least we didn't claim to have crossed it.
No, we didn't cross it. We didn't cross it. We deployed the mass mobilization. In 1999, during Kargil, we actually announced to the world, look, we won't cross the LOC. In 2008, we didn't cross. So many Uris and Pathankots have gone. We didn't cross. But this time we have crossed. We've told the diplomatic world we've done it. So I cannot see, and the point that you make, that the Pakistani...
Have they learned the lesson?
No, it's not lesson. it is that when the people of Pakistan get to know that this actually happened, what will they do?
That is exactly the point.
And see, if you watch what Asim Baweja, the ISPR general, he made a categorical, and by the way, the chap was in Nepal as a young major. He made this categorical statement, and that nobody's crossed the line. And yet, Rahil Sharif is reported to have made a statement that ye kaise, what kind of people are these Indians that they have left their people behind. So when you say we have left our people behind, it means we have crossed.
Exactly. Okay.
So, you know, they have put themselves in a bind. Now, whether that is they have been wise or otherwise, I don't, I think otherwise.
Okay. Rakesh, you know, does this signal the end of ceasefire? The ceasefire, which was, you know, 2003 ceasefire, which was sacrosanct so far. Does this signal the end of it?
Well, the ceasefire had more or less ended after 2008, and since that time we've actually seen an escalation compared to the 2003 to 2008 period. Post 2008, we've actually seen an escalation in incidents of exchange of fire across the line of control. Secondly, I think there is enough evidence to indicate that in the past also we have taken certain steps where our soldiers have gone across the line of control to undertake certain operations, but we have never talked about it. This time, I think, given the domestic compulsions on the government after Uri, and, you know, coming after Pathankot in January, coming after Gurdaspur last year, so there was enormous amount of pressure, and there was an expectation that this government has to react and has to undertake a certain amount of punitive action. And I think this is what has been done. But at the same time, I think it's also very clear that the government has also sought to de-escalate, because one of the things that DGMO said yesterday in his press briefing was that this was a one-shot exercise and is not going to be repeated. So which meant that he was also conveying a signal to the Pakistanis that India would not be repeating this exercise. And naturally, a repetition would also be difficult because the Pakistanis would be better prepared. But nonetheless, it was a signal towards de-escalation.
No, but General Mehta was saying that we have, you know, the Indian government had done some preparations for this, had spoken to some of the envoys here from different countries. Have we admitted to these envoys? Have we told these envoys that we have crossed the LOC?
Yes, in our briefing to the envoys, we have conveyed to them that we crossed the LOC. We went into what we consider disputed territory, which is Pakistani-occupied Kashmir, because there was an imminent threat of terrorists assembling there to infiltrate into India. So what we did was we invoked self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter, which is very much permitted, that we took action to neutralize an imminent threat coming from across the line of control.
Okay, so and it was very clear from the DGMO statement also that this was an exercise, this was a counter-terrorism strategy. It was not a, you know.
It was not an offensive operation in that sense, it was a counter-terrorism operation.
Girish, there's the DGMO, in his description of the operation, what is remarkable about this operation, and in the past, you know, we've done covert, as Rakesh has said, but we have never done it at 5 points, spread over.
Exactly, 200 kilometers.
And just one other, and briefly, that he has told the DGMO that, look, this is what we have done. This is a counter-terrorism operation. It is not directed at the Pak army. For the moment, we contemplate no further action.
So it was a clear signal. Okay, Mr. Banerjee, what is the signal? You know, what was the signal that which India was trying to give to Pakistan, and has Pakistan taken that signal according to you?
Well, the signal is very clear that this is a strong tactical riposte, and the capability to do this has been demonstrated. Of course, it is an outcome of the great domestic pressure which Rakesh talked about. But what is intriguing is that in the reactions coming from Pakistan, much has been made of the two soldiers martyred. You know, their funerals have been attended by high dignitaries, but there is complete silence in the mainstream media in Pakistan so far from the so-called, you know, jihadi leadership or the leaders of, you know, outfits like Jamaat-ud-Dawa, who generally are allowed to.
No, they have just started talking. In fact,
talk very freely.
No, sir. In fact, just
Hafiz
before
Saeed.
we came into the studio, I heard Hafiz Saeed, you know, saying something. They have started in any
Well,
case.
yeah, they would be, you know, waiting for a signal to start. But what is, you know, intriguing for me is, you see, because if there have been 38 casualties of, you know, terrorists in some of these launching pads, then ultimately the outfits who sponsor these
So they have to be those their boys.
they would have to acknowledge that their boys have been, you know, within inverted commas, martyred. So this usually comes out in obituary lists which they update on in their sites periodically. So we will have to keep an eye on these sites if and when this happens.
So you know, another thing is that the entire Pakistan media has completely, you know, denied that there was this surgical strikes, and they are towing the Pakistan government's line. Why do you think that's happening? And another thing is that, you know, these bodies, these 30, 38, you know, of course, there's no, Indian government has not given any official statement so far about how many died or, you know, what have been the casualties. But if there are casualties, where are they? Isn't that a question which will be asked? Which
Yes,
needs to be asked?
These bodies should eventually be found either on, you know, close to the LOC or on whichever side. But as has been informally sort of conveyed to some of the pressmen who attended the DGMO's briefing, that there is some evidence or record which is available with the para commandos who went in, either in the form of, you know, body held camera pictures or even drone pictures, which would provide proof of the action. So it's at a point of their choosing if they let this evidence come out or whether they don't want to let it come out at this stage in the interest of not escalating the matter further.
Okay. Pramit, how do you think the Western countries especially will view this? You know, the US, because it's quite evident that there was some kind of a conversation between the NSA and Susan Rice, but it is said that it happened before the incident, before the strikes took place. But following that, do you see that Americans especially have been, you know, more or less subdued on this issue, or you think they are waiting for some? What are they waiting for?
I think they are subdued, and I think deliberately so. The American utility for the utility of Pakistan for America strategically is now much reduced. America has now barely about 10,000 troops left in Afghanistan. They don't really need Pakistan anymore. You've seen in the U.S. Congress, there have been several sessions now in which Pakistan has been violently attacked, especially the Pakistan military. America slashed most of its aid to Pakistan. The waxing and waning of the U.S.-Pakistan relationship is right now very much in the waning phase, and it will probably continue for some time to come. So there is no question, I think, in my mind, that the strategic utility of Pakistan regarding America's presence in Afghanistan is now rolling down drastically. On the other hand, the counterterrorism concerns regarding Pakistan, you saw the New Yorker bomber was trained in, I think it was Quetta, and they continue, and in the U.S. Senate there were denunciations of Lashkar because they believe Lashkar is carrying out attacks that are killing American soldiers. That the Americans now becomes basically reverting to a position of Pakistan basically as a source of safe haven or a source of terrorism, not only against us but against other countries. So the Americans, I think, have been are completely in. So the Americans are very much of the view now, I think, are moving to the stage where they really are quite all right with at least a carefully calculated attack by India against Pakistan, as has been mentioned by the other speakers, in a manner that tries to prevent or curbs the degree of likelihood of escalation.
Okay.
And part of the means by which you curb it is to make it very clear that the Americans are not particularly bothered by what you've done, and that's exactly what's happened in this case.
Okay, Mr. Sikri, two things. One is should any of the international community ask for evidence? Is it that India should come out with this evidence? You think India will be forced to come out with this evidence? Is it in our interest to come out with this evidence?
I don't think that we are going to be put in that kind of situation. I think that the international community has actually been waiting because everyone is a bit tired of India just complaining and doing nothing. And our pretensions to be a great power were very hollow if we could not tackle these terrorist threats on the ground on our own. Now, here we have signaled that we have the capability and the political will to do so. And the world respects that. We have a very strong case. Pakistan has been in the doghouse as far as terrorism concerned for a very long time. So it doesn't require too much convincing on our part to the rest of the world that, Pakistan is a terrorist state. We have stated that openly in the UN. And so I don't see that kind of a problem arising. And we have done our diplomacy. We have conveyed to everyone. We saw the reactions from different countries, including from some members of the OIC. And I think we have reason to be satisfied. There's another point. We have got our neighbors with us. Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan. So, when that happens, then the rest of the world also sees, well, there is something. It's not just India. It's a general problem, which is why the SAARC summit has had to be postponed. So I think that the overall atmosphere is much
conducive.
better.
You think it's conducive for India to put its case forward?
We have already put our case. We have now taken the action. Of course, there's a lot more which needs to be done. I think one of the things that we should be doing with the Americans is to somehow convey to the Pakistanis that, this irresponsible talk of nuclear action and so forth, that this is rubbish, that the world will not tolerate that. We need to be having a dialogue with China. Now, China has been a bit careful that we are having a dialogue with both sides. So we need to be a bit, careful with China because, and I thought I saw in Sushma Swaraj's speech at the UNGA an tangential hit at China also, saying that countries which are not with us in this war should be isolated. Now, what is China doing on Masood Azhar? It's an indirect thing. It's coming up for renewal now in a few days. So I think that we need to continue with this aggressive diplomacy. The third thing is, are we going to move ahead on declaring Pakistan a terrorist state? We have stated that in the UN.
Exactly.
But, and the Congress has asked for a special session on this. But I don't know. So these are all things that we'll have to think about carefully.
But General Mehta, one of the things which was being said, you were mentioning that we had not crossed the LOC, and we have not mentioned that we had crossed the LOC before and things like that. Now, have we lost the moral high ground? Some people feel that by doing this we have lost the moral high ground.
Well, these are the people in the West. If you notice, in the last week or so, we've had a number of visitors, analysts from abroad. They are talking about the virtues of India's strategic restraint. And
we
that the moral high
ground till very recently.
But I think this operation is so craftily choreographed. The way post the operation, you see, as far as the military operation is concerned, I don't know from where this figure of 38 has come, unless it has come from Pakistan. The DGMO says that we don't know.
No, he said that there have been significant.
The word
significant casualties.
So, in my view, in my assessment, the more important thing was not the damage that we have done. It is a symbolic act that we have crossed the LOC.
It's a psychological barrier which we have crossed.
And we have crossed it, but we have crossed it without losing the moral high ground because the way we have choreographed it. We have called the diplomatic community, we have told them, we have said that we have suffered this constantly from Pakistan. These heart pangs we have suffered since last 27 years. And our tolerance is limited now. And we are crossing this to preempt an operation of further infiltration. and we have told
Okay.
the DGMO. So I think we haven't lost our moral high ground. We have taken action against those terrorists, and we have told the world that we have done so, as was being mentioned, in self-defense, invoking whatever charter.
Okay, Rakesh, the question is, one of the things which, one of the objectives of India, if you look at the Prime Minister's speeches abroad and, and even Sushma Swaraj in the UNGA and things like that, isolating Pakistan. Does this action help in isolating Pakistan, or is this a separate strategy? That is a separate strategy.
I think we have to look at this as separate strategies, because it is quite clear. If you look at the Prime Minister's speech that he gave in Kerala, followed by his radio talk.
The Kerala speech and the radio talk, everybody thought that strategic restraint was what is being, advocated.
Well, but at the same time, he continued to say that those who did this shall not go unpunished.
Yes.
So what he has done in terms of the strike, and as was brought out earlier in the program, that he has targeted the same kind of terrorists who were planning to infiltrate across the line of control. So in a sense, that punishment has been meted out, or that punitive action has been undertaken. Meanwhile, what he has continued to do is to continue on the process of diplomatic isolation. And I think there are two parallel tracks. This one had a limited objective in terms of addressing domestic compulsions. And I think it was important for him to be able to do that. Also, let's not forget that we have been victims of these kind of attacks, whether it was Mumbai, whether it was 2001 Parliament attack and so on, of infiltration coming in from across the border, whether by sea or across on the land boundary. And we have built up our capabilities. So a certain amount of new capabilities have been built up, which enable us to undertake this kind of retaliatory action, which was perhaps not possible 8 years ago or 16 years ago. And that is it. But nonetheless, I think there is a degree of restraint, and which is critical, and I think that is going to be maintained, because let's not forget that Pakistan is a nuclear weapon state.
Exactly.
It has a large, capable army, and that is a challenge. So I think the diplomatic isolation strategy will continue.
Okay. Rana Banerjee, what was if you look at the whole, from what everybody is saying and what we have, heard and read in the last 24 hours, the objective was to show that we have this capability and we have demonstrated it. But as far as the achievement, what have we achieved out of this strikes? Is this something which we will get to know now, or we'll have to wait? Because what about retaliation? Isn't that something which we have to take note of and be careful about? And what kind of retaliation can we expect and we should be, prepared for?
Oh, absolutely. We should not be complacent at all. And the possibility of retaliation in several ways is there, and we should be alert against it. Firstly, there are security gaps already in our, defensive or homeland security grid, be they in the outlying, outpost, administrative division units at the back of, battalions which are not so well defended. There are also BSF outposts. There are in the Samba, Araspura sector of the international border is again very prone to infiltration. So in all these areas, we should have heightened alert, because we cannot overrule the possibility of some sort of desperado action, either instigated by the army leadership there, or taken on by desperate elements within the Jamaat-ud-Dawa, Jaish-e-Mohammed on their own. So both the possibilities remain.
Okay. Mr. Sikri, now that all this has happened, but we are hearing from the international community, some of the countries asking for restraint. So one of the objectives of Pakistan has always been to get us onto the table as far as Kashmir is concerned. You think that pressure will grow now?
I don't think we'll talk to Pakistan on Kashmir. We've made it very clear, and I think that the Prime Minister would be making a mistake and would suffer politically were he to go down that road. I think
no, but that is a different matter. I'm asking the kind of pressure.
No, Kashmir. We have, our position now is that POK is a part of India which is illegally occupied. Mr. Rajavardhan Rathore made this point very clearly yesterday. So, and what we need to talk about in terms of the 1994 Parliament resolution is how to vacate that. Now, what we do internally within Kashmir, of course, has a relevance, but that is our internal matter. We need to sort that out, but that is a separate issue. As far as the international community is concerned, I think it's worth noting that Mrs. Sushma Swaraj very emphatically stated at the UN that J&K is a part of India, inalienable part of India, and will remain so. That was a message to the international community also. Please do not have any thoughts about getting involved in the J&K issue.
Okay, Rakesh, how do you look at it?
No, I think Rajiv is absolutely right.
But I'm talking about the pressure because, you know,
I don't
China
think-
is talking about it,
I know.
US is talking about it,
Yes,
you know,
but
Russia will talk about it.
Well, perhaps, but I think what has happened is that Prime Minister Modi realizes one thing, that in a sense he needs the support of the international community to ensure the diplomatic isolation, because that cannot happen just by India alone.
Right.
At the same time, he needs to walk this tightrope, as it were, that the cooperation of the international community to ensure the isolation is best done by also demonstrating the strategic restraint that we talked about. So, in a sense, if the action that we have taken is seen as a limited action, a retributive action, and after that we see a demonstration of strategic restraint, then it helps Prime Minister Modi in his objective of ensuring the diplomatic isolation of Pakistan.
No, but General Mehta?
Yeah, I think the question that you have asked is pertinent, because ultimately there is no military or diplomatic solution to this. It has to be a political solution. So, we will not talk to Pakistan now, but ultimately we have to do two things, in fact 3 things. One is to build the capacities to impose costs and punishment so that we can attempt to alter the behavior of the Pakistani deep state and limit the damage that they do through cross-border infiltration as well as these Fedayeen attacks. And we won't go into how that needs to be. The second thing is, which has been damaged because of this PDP-BJP alliance, is the situation in Kashmir. It is an inhibitor. It is a handicap for the security forces to deal with cross-border terrorism. And the third is the external dimension. You have to talk to Pakistan. You can keep saying it's an inalienable part, it's integral to India. We've been saying it. But we know that we have to talk, and a time will come when we will decide when to talk to Pakistan.
Okay.
But we have to talk to them.
Okay, I think on that note, we'll end. There are several challenges, as all my panelists have pointed out. This will be very interesting to watch how the government will take it from here, because that is what is very important, that restraint, whether it will continue, and also very important, we'll have to wait and watch what Pakistanis will do. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue, The Big Picture, same time on Monday. Meanwhile, have a great weekend.